Hmm?
Haven't thought of that movie in forever.
There's a good reason. It wasn't great.
Yeah, I remember it being pretty bad.
Yeah.
Well, Madonna, as talented as a singer and marketer as she is not a talented actress. So.
No, and who else? And it was
Rosanna Arquette.
yeah, one of the Arquette sisters anyway, playing the part of the person that was confused as Madonna.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Wasn't great.
Should I be in live stream chat? I'm trying to think which one I'm supposed to be in.
Yeah.
Live stream.
Chat. Live stream.
Boy, I'm sorry, buddy. We'll go.
Just shocked because there's nobody in there.
We'll go for a walk later, buddy. I promise.
Are we moving
Hello?
time next week?
What's that? Yeah,
Hey,
there. Oh,
everybody.
Life is there, old school. Hello, Wirehead. Good afternoon, Doreen. Hello. How is everybody? Yeah, next week we will do the change. I think we'll announce that and give Friday night a chance. Or wait, Monday night a chance.
Monday.
Because I went again live last night around 9 of all things, and I got tons of people. So later does work better for some, as others are just arriving, getting home from work, trying to get their things done, and still be here for the Three View Mirror. I hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody had enjoyed their week, had a good week as we progress steadily towards summer. Dude, be Gen Excellent to each other. Got to say, I'm liking the shirt.
Thanks. You can actually get it on Gen X Jono's merchandise store at, what is it, Gen X Jono Dashery?
GenXJono.dashery.com.
Yeah.
There is a Chris Clues collection, which should be growing by at least 2 more as soon as I can get to it. But yeah. You can get this one too.
You can get that one too. Yeah, for those of you that were the hip hop fans, I got another one coming that says Gen X gonna give it to you. And if you are rap or hip hop fans, you'll know who that is playing off of. But yeah, appreciate it.
Life says y'all are running a little late. Better late than never. Had illnesses and life to contend with over the last couple weeks. Death, specifically. My father-in-law passed. God rest his soul. May he rest in peace and may his memory be forever eternal. Stuff that we deal with as we get older and move on to being that next level. Shelley, you said your grandmother's still with us, yeah?
Yes.
God bless.
Yeah. I still have a grandmother. My children who are 18 have a great grandmother. It's amazing. She's 90. I think she'll be 97 or 98. Yeah.
Let's hope you benefit from her genetic good stuff.
So far.
All right. Well, let's welcome people to the Three View Mirror off from a 2-week hiatus, but we are back. There are changes in the air, things going on. But today, let's focus on just welcoming you to an hour where you can get away from it all. Take a break, join 3 friends and a virtually live studio audience, and just talk about things that take us back to the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. And what things you might ask? Well, 3 very specific, seemingly random things that touch on each of those decades. And yet, there is a common thread, something that connects the 3 of those that at the end of our hour will give you a chance to try to guess. Now, again, at the end of the hour, we know how intelligent our virtually live studio audience is. We know that you guys get it sometimes, but part of the fun is getting there. So let us get there by going through the hour and just talking about each of the topics as we go through. I plan to be the host this week, and I plan to shell it in the best possible way. Because there are 2 versions of shelling it. One of them is being human and not getting things perfect, but the other is delivering some of the best content we've ever seen. So I'm planning on shelling it this week.
Knock it out of the park, John.
Knocking it out of the park.
Because sometimes I'm a hit or miss kind of girl.
Hey,
you know what I mean?
It's a home run or a strikeout. Nothing.
There's no foul balls here. Yeah.
So my name is John Katrides, better known as Gen X Jono across my social media platforms. You can find me on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. If you're one of 425, not 100,000, but actual 425 people, you can find me on Twitter because that doesn't work for me at all. And I'm joined with 2 of my closest friends. Chris?
I'm Chris Clues, keynote speaker, author, and I write and speak about the lessons for life that we can learn from 80s pop culture. I'll be in Jacksonville Monday and Sarasota on Tuesday, speaking to different organizations. And yes, Kevin, crab cakes only have crab in them. That is absolutely correct. the best Maryland crab cakes only have jumbo lump crab meat.
Shell.
And I'm Rochelle Oblak, better known sometimes as Gen X Shell, which I'm trying to get away from that moniker a little bit, but I like it. It sticks. You can find me on social media on all the usual channels, and I haven't posted much lately, but my website and things that I'm working on are coming soon.
Sweet. And this is the Three View Mirror. All right, so today's topics. Kevin Pierpoint, are you in here, my buddy? Because Kevin helped me come up. There he is. Kevin helped me come up with these topics today. At least two of them. One I kind of deviated away from, but I want to give a shout out. And you can reach out to any of us if you guys have ideas that you think might work for a future episode of the Three View Mirror. Reach out. Find us on social media or throw us an email at whatever email address you find in our trees, link trees or otherwise, and let us know. So the three topics today by me are the show Taxi, the show The Wonder Years, and casual sex.
Sounds like fun.
I don't remember. I've been married so long.
Been married for a long time. It doesn't.
70s is Taxi. The 80s is actually casual sex. Not because that's when people were having casual sex, but it's actually the title of a movie from 1988 called Casual Sex. And then the 90s is when most of the Wonder Years ran. And I want to start with Taxi. What do you guys think?
I didn't watch too much of it, but I know the premise of the show, and I know who was on it, and a little bit about it. But I didn't watch too much of it.
I love it. It was one of those shows that we talk about sometimes when we were in our living room or family room back in the day. And I remember sitting there watching Taxi with my dad and feeling like an adult because I was watching kind of an adult sitcom. And, you know, one of those casts that just had so much chemistry. And also we talk about these ensemble casts that are so few and far between that are just perfection. And Taxi was one of them.
Yeah, I mean, it was the era of that ensemble cast when we weren't really seeing a lot of shows that were out there on the forefront without a supporting cast, at least. Even something like the Mary Tyler Moore Show, which was a one person running the show, or Rhoda, which was one person running the show, or Alice. These shows always came with the supporting cast. Mm-hmm. And it continued into the 80s and into the 90s, but the 70s for a lot of us were our first foray into it as kids watching. Taxi to me was just like to you, Chris. It felt almost like I was being allowed to watch something I shouldn't have been watching. I sometimes knew that the jokes were kind of going over my head. And, you know, Richard mentions Reverend Jim. Old School's talking about Andy Kaufman. You had Carol Kane. You had Danny DeVito, Marilu Henner, Tony Danza, who some people say I look a little bit like Tony Danza. I was going to say a young Tony Danza, but only because he's significantly older than me. I look like an old Tony Danza from Taxi, but a younger Tony Danza from today.
I could see that. I could see it. Yeah, and then you grow out the porn stash, and then it's the Tom Selleck. You know.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hold me close, Tony Danza.
Hold me close, young Tony Danza.
Young Tony. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, again, we talk about theme songs as well. And even though the theme song didn't have words to it, you know, that song, I can hear it in my head now, like the theme song itself and how much the theme songs meant to the shows when we were growing up. And you just had to hear a couple notes and you're like, that show's on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe maybe part of that was because they knew there was no other opportunities. Nowadays, you have the streaming, you can watch a show anytime you want. But the music was important because if you're in another room and you hear the two notes, you're like, oh, I forgot. The show's on, and then you go in and watch it.
No, it definitely got us in our seats, all of them. If I heard Dukes of Hazzard, all I had here was just the good old boys, and boom, we were running for number one, to make sure our parents didn't change the channel. Because if the channel got changed and they found out one of their shows happened to be on, then it wasn't going back to ours.
for as much as I didn't watch the show, except for little bits maybe here and there, I can still physically recall seeing that taxi, the first person view of that taxi going over, what was it, the Brooklyn Bridge? Was the Brooklyn Bridge, going over the Brooklyn Bridge and hearing that very, very soft sound coming out.
What instrument was that?
Yeah,
I can hear it. I don't know what instrument that is.
It's just a soft sound for a gritty show, though, and it was I that was the juxtaposition of that there, and it you didn't assume by the opening sequence of the show that's what the show was going to be, but it came to be that way.
Soft
and all the shows of the 70s were gritty like that. We've talked about it. I can't think of a bright, cheery. I mean, One Day at a Time, Alice, Taxi, Sanford and Son. Good Times, What's Happening, they all had that grittiness to them. MASH.
Can we just comment that Martha is in rural Australia? Are you there now? Is that where you live? Because if you're coming from Australia, that's pretty awesome.
Yes.
You're coming to us from the future. Is it got to be like 6 or 7 in the morning there? So thanks for coming in all the way from Australia. That's really awesome. Had nothing to do with Taxi, but just had to mention that.
No, but it just goes to show the reach of the internet and what's so amazing. And we all have experienced it, whether you experience it when you're out there on your keynote addresses or Shell and I, more to the point, on our social media. Gen X doesn't have any boundaries, whether it's Great Britain or New Zealand, the United States or Canada. I mean, I've got people coming at me from all across the world, and it's incredible. We all share a lot in common.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I listen. I go back to Taxi and the characters in it and how it launched so many careers. I don't know, maybe if Danny DeVito was doing too much before Taxi, but clearly a big vehicle for him, a big vehicle for Christopher Lloyd. I mean, Mary Lou Henner. Taxi ran from 77 to 81?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So I was I suppose I could have had a crush on her. I might have been a little young, not quite ready yet, but
I don't remember her doing much after, but she was always a part of pop culture. She remained. I think I've talked about, she had this amazing interview on later with Bob Costas. And I'm pretty sure I've told you guys the story. Basically, she has an eidetic memory. You can say to her, June 13th, 1978, and she'll tell you what she did that day.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Every single day. She has a perfect memory. Wow. And totally unrehearsed, totally unpracticed. The clip is probably living off on YouTube land for you guys to find it. But Bob Costas randomly picked the day she lost her virginity. And you just see her flush instantly when he comes up with a date. And she's like, how did you know? And obviously he didn't. Yeah. It was random, but pretty cool.
Joni said that the Taxi theme was actually played on a recorder, which, now that you say it,
that does make sense.
When you say what instrument was that, and then I'm picturing my 3rd grade recorder.
Is there anything more Gen X than that?
Yeah, I'm picturing it, and I'm thinking that makes total sense because that is what it sounds like.
Not cross.
That is awesome. I need to learn to do that. I am so going to learn. I may not be able to solve a Rubik's Cube, but by the end of next week, I will be able to do a Taxi on the recorder.
I want to see that. Or I want to see
that. It says it was a vibraphone.
Oh.
So I'm not sure.
What's a vibraphone?
I don't know. Maybe it's a recorder.
Does that have anything to do with the last segment of the show? I just wondered.
I don't know. I don't know if that you talk into it. Is that what they mean by whispering sweet nothings? Just not into your ear?
Oh, Andy Kaufman, that's right. Yeah, and the other cool thing about Taxi was just there was an episode where they all went to Reverend Jim's house for, I think it was for Christmas or some holiday, and he was like a multimillionaire.
Yeah,
his family was like wealthy, and I thought that was so cool because it was a little bit different than all the other shows before it, where the character was kind of the character. They came from a certain place. They kind of played that part. And then suddenly you have this incredibly interesting, strange dude. And he looks like he was homeless before he drove a taxi cab, and he ends up being a multimillionaire.
Here I come to save the day.
Yeah. And he also did the wrestling thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Andy Kaufman. Yeah.
Yeah, where he just wrestled women. He did the sketch on David Letterman when a wrestler actually beat the tar out of him.
Yeah.
And only recently, in the last 5 or 6 years, I think, did Letterman actually come out and say, okay, it was a bit. They finally admitted the fact that it wasn't real.
Jerry Lawler.
Jerry Lawler.
Yeah. He also, if you watch Man on the Moon,
Yes.
Jerry, man, that was so good. His story is incredibly, it's inspirational and it's bizarre because he was an interesting character, but his story is inspirational. He really went out there and just did his own thing on stage as stand-up and didn't really care. If people are going to like it or not, this is what I think is funny and I'm going to do it. And
he did a lot of that in the 70s, dude. Steve Martin, if you look at his early comedic stuff, it wasn't anything I ever thought was funny. Mm-hmm. But he went out there and that's literally, you just took the words out of his mouth. He's like, I'm just going to do what I think is funny. And he found his audience. I thought he was funnier in movies. I didn't find his stand-up early on real funny. The arrow in the head thing but it worked. He found his audience. Vibraphone apparently is a percussion instrument. No pun intended.
Well, the matches up then. Carol Kane. I forgot Carol Kane was in that. So
yeah, she played a lot because of the little wife.
Yeah.
Just amazing performances. You didn't have to watch the show to appreciate the actors. I forgot to mention Jeff Conway. So Kenickie from Grease was in it as well. And the storyline was just these people that were in each other's lives for what was supposed to be a really transitory time. Nobody aspired to be a cab driver working for Danny DeVito. They were struggling actors. There was a struggling boxer. There was Reverend Jim and Latka doing whatever the hell they were doing. Judd Hirsch. Yeah. I don't remember Judd Hirsch's character's name, but he was way too smart for the job he was in. This is just where they happened to find themselves, and they were younger then than we thought they were. Here I thought these were these really old people, but they really weren't. I just think it's amazing.
See, and if it was 77 to 81, even when the show ended, I would have been 8 years old. And that's part of the reason. And a lot of the shows, if you missed them, if your family didn't watch them and they weren't a family oriented show, like I remember watching Alice or One Day at a Time, those I saw because I was young enough. I was, maybe a 7-year-old kid. My parents were watching it and I could watch that with them. But Taxi wasn't on my parents' list. And so therefore, I really didn't get to see it. The channel was changed fairly quickly. And most of what I've seen has been in later years, bits, pieces. I know what Danny DeVito's role is. He was the boss that you love to hate. Yeah, I loved him anyway. And I know those pieces, but I really don't have a full picture of what the show is.
It's worth looking back at, if nothing else. Like we always talk about, the Three View Mirror is us looking back as we move forward. I would recommend to anyone that doesn't have a conscious memory of the show, just Google YouTube, Danny DeVito's greatest moments on Taxi, YouTube, Reverend Jim's funniest moments, YouTube, Latka's, and you could just take it piecemeal. Because these were little, tiny, to use Kevin's words from earlier, he was talking about Steve Martin, but this show was also performance art. There were moments in it that you could take on their own, and it was just that good. It was Seinfeldian before Seinfeld in creating little moments that lived on by themselves. Seinfeldian. I like that.
I like it.
And I think you also hit on something at the very beginning, John, where you were throwing out all these names of sitcoms. This was like the sitcom era from like the mid 70s, probably through, let's say, like 2000. We just had, and especially the 70s and the 80s, you had most of the shows on TV. They were either sitcoms, they were soap operas, or they were cop dramas. Mm-hmm. And the sitcoms at that time, like for you to be a good sitcom, you had to really be good because there was so much competition. You just mentioned Sanford and Son, All in the Family, Taxi, Barney Miller, the Jeffersons, Good Times, Welcome Back, Kotter. That's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just the surface. And then you get into the early 80s and you start to get Cheers. And it's just.
But by the 80s, you had Cheers, but you didn't have 10 other versions of Cheers. It was Cheers. the 70s had so many more that were almost on equal footing. It seemed by the 80s we started anointing royalty. Like, you're the one to watch. This is must-see TV. This is the event. Whereas the 70s was a bunch of not quite ready for primetime players that all had their little corner on our 3 networks.
And if I could comment on Taxi, and then we mentioned shows like Welcome Back, Kotter and Alice and One Day at a Time. And I think we've talked about this before, about that grittiness, about the like dirty 70s kind of thing. Everyone was broke,
Porn scare!
What?
The porn scare!
The porn scare. Everyone, we'll never forget that one. Oh, those of you that weren't here, that was another Shell moment. Okay. Everything was, we all know the colors were very rusty and brown and gritty and dirty in those days, as was the comedy, no one in these were taxi drivers, One Day at a Time. This was, a building super and a mom I can't remember where the mom worked on One Day at a Time, but it was all
much better.
Yeah, it was a different segment of society that we were taking a look at that point. And it seemed like once we got into the 80s, then we started up in the game towards, everyone was broke.
Yeah.
I don't know if we necessarily lived in the projects, but
a lot of them did. Good Times, What's Happening, One Day at a Time, all projects. Chico and the Man.
Yeah, and then it went up into the 80s. You got the Cosby Show, and then you started getting the shiny, happy families,
Yes.
that didn't tell the gritty story anymore. And it was just a complete changeover. So that's just a little commentary on the shows from the 70s transitioning over into the 80s. It's just a general observation.
And we've talked that it wasn't just the shows, it was our lives in the 70s. Yeah. We lived America. America was living within their means in the 70s. And if that meant we were driving a used LTD that was 9 years old, then that's what it was. The 80s was the era of credit cards and debt, and everything looked shinier, prettier, happier. But just like America, we were seeing debt for the first time, and we never, ever went back to really living within our means, sociologically speaking.
And these were the days when my father, like when you had 2 cars and they were both used, and I can remember distinctly gas, my father siphoning gas from one car, with the tube to put it into the other car, because that was the car that was actually running and the other one needed fixed, and you had to fix it yourself, Or,
well, this is a transition as we go into the Wonder Years, because we're at about that. So I'm going to call last call in a minute. But before I call last call and give you guys a last opportunity, there is a segment on the Wonder Years, which actually happens later. It's a 90s era show, but about the 50s and 60s. And they see Dad coming home with a new car, and it's always a new used car. And the whole neighborhood running around to see it. That was the 70s for me. In my small town, when my dad came home with a new car, it was 10 years old. It was 8 years old. It was never new for us, but the entire neighborhood, it was an event for the neighborhood.
Well, I just want to comment one more thing before we move on to Wonder Years about these 70s shows and then into the 80s. And the 70s shows are really, like you said, about how we were living. These were like people we could relate to. They were our neighbors. They lived on our street. They had the kind of jobs that our parents had. And the difference, of course, now, and I think part of it was because the social media and all the stuff that's happening, things are so accessible now. Everybody wants the bling. All of a sudden there was this shift in how people perceive themselves. Like, we were comfortable in our own skin. This is who I am. This is who my family is. I'm cool with it. Yeah. And your parents always hopefully wanted you to get a little bit better, but we were all comfortable with that. And the TV shows reflected it. The only shows that didn't were the ones like the nighttime soap operas like Dallas and Dynasty, or the daytime soap operas. Those were different worlds. We didn't have access to that because we couldn't see pictures and images of it unless you watched The Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. So they gave us that on a small scale. They were like, here's how some people live. But most of the shows were about how all of us lived. And now it's kind of flipped on its head. When you see a show about how people live normally, everybody's like, whoa, that's different.
Margaret mentions that, as well, the new used car. That was a big thing. And to your point, Chris, that's what the 70s shows showed us. They showed us that lifestyle, and it was totally relatable.
And if I could just comment too, growing up early in the 70s was my super childhood, born in 73. But growing up in the 80s, then as we headed on into this newer, shinier stuff, I think it gave a lot of us Gen Xers complexes on that constant need to keep up then too, especially for women. You had to keep up on beauty standards. This was the age of the supermodel. This was the age of the perfect family. And that was, put out on TV. And, that's what we were sort of raised on a lot. So, we could have a whole show based on just that stuff. So anyway.
Without a doubt. So that was our first topic, and that was the show that represented the 70s. Now, ironically, the show that I'm going to go to next started in the late 80s, 88, I think, and went 5 or 6 seasons into the 90s, and that was the Wonder Years. Now, the Wonder Years took us back through nostalgia to a time that was about 30 years earlier than the show itself. And I just remember in the 90s or the late 80s being like, wow, the 60s and the early 70s were so different, and this show was so nostalgic. If the Wonder Years happened today and we wanted to mimic the same feeling of nostalgia, we'd still be in the 2000s. We wouldn't even be in the 1900s. That's how I know I do that a lot, but it's like, that's not possible.
That's why I was like
wandering around in the year 2008, and we're all like, "Oh my God, look how cute it was back then."
Yeah.
Oh, and I mean, I would say that the only thing that's changed is social media, but I'm not sure. Social media has changed everything. So I guess it could potentially be interesting if it was just a year or two before social media exploded, or maybe there was just MySpace. It would kind of be fascinating to go see it, I guess, but it would not be.
I love Kevin's point here. I say this, Winnie Cooper was the villain of the show by rejecting Kevin. Not only at the end, Kevin, she brutalized that poor kid. Now, Shell, is this a show you did watch?
No.
Come on now. No. I went into the 90s.
No, by then I don't know. I was in my party years. I was into the third topic or something. I'm not really sure. I just
still high school for you, I would hope. 88, 89.
No, in the 90s, it was one of those shows that it didn't show it. It wasn't an interest to me. I do know the Winnie story. I watched little bits of it. I've seen an episode or two, but I never really watched that show either.
Chris?
I did watch it. I wasn't a, what would you call it today? What do they call the, like a power fan, or what do they call it?
Super fan.
Super fan. I wasn't a super fan of it, but I did watch it. And of course, one of my favorite movies had Fred Savage in it. So in 1987, if anybody knows what movie Fred Savage was in 1987, I'll let you guys comment in the
Shell's never seen it.
Yeah, Shell's never seen it. And it had a wrestler in it.
Princess Bride.
And I love pro wrestling, so it had Andre the Giant in it. Yeah, Fred Savage was in The Princess Bride.
Oh.
So the Wonder Years, my daughter and I just finished watching it. We're, I think, 2 episodes away from the end, and she's 13, and she's complete. It's so cute to watch her because she knows there's only 2 episodes left. She's trying to watch anything but the Wonder Years. And I'm like, "Do you want to watch an episode of the Wonder Years?" She's like, "No." She doesn't want it to end. Oh. She's completely enamored with the time when kids were just on their bikes, and there's this innocence about it. And Fred and Winnie's Fred's character on the show, Kevin and Winnie's first kiss was actually the actor's real first kiss. The show itself was innocent. There were a lot of people in and out of the show. David Schwimmer had a part from Friends in it for a while. There's just a lot of people that came in and out of this show. But she's like, "Dad, was this what it was like growing up with you?" And the show starts in like 68 and takes us to like 73 or 74, when a lot of us were really young. But I'm like, yeah, a lot of this still holds true.
So,
no, Winnie's not in her 70s now. Sorry.
The character.
Oh, yes.
Yes. The character was.
She was in her 50s. The actress was in her 50s.
But he's right. I told my daughter, I go, these characters, they're boomers.
Yeah.
I go, the actors are Gen Xers, but the characters are boomers. Exactly to Record Hound's point.
Well, Tony Basil's almost 80, and that's the one I can't believe. But anyway, going back to the Wonder Years was what years, John?
Like 88 until 93.
So was that the first? I mean, you would consider that it's not a sitcom. It's kind of like a dramedy.
Yeah, it's a dramedy.
It's a dramedy, right? Were they the first? I mean, that's interesting because I guess because they're a dramedy, they wouldn't use a laugh track, but I remember not being like one of the first shows that I was watching where there wasn't like, they weren't telling me when to laugh. Although there were serious scenes too, but you know, some of these sitcoms had serious episodes as well, but they always told you when to laugh basically. And that one didn't. Like, you had to decide when you thought it was funny, which I think was kind of new.
Sean talks about the Wonder Years letting her not see the final 2 episodes. And there's something to that, Sean, because it doesn't, the 80s often did something that we talk about, and that's they gave us the endings we wanted. They wrapped things up often the way we wanted them to. By the late 80s into the 90s, that started to change. Sam and Diane didn't necessarily end up together. Everything didn't get wrapped up with a pretty little bow. And this is one of those shows that they, at the end, they don't get together. Spoiler alert, 20 years later. Look at me thinking the 90s or 20 years ago. Spoiler alert, 30-something years later. But yeah, it didn't.
So Daniel Stern, somebody said, narrated the Wonder Years.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's his voice all the way through it.
Is it really? That's awesome. Because I mean, one of my favorite comedies is City Slickers. So I'm like a huge.
And it doesn't sound like him. That's like when you try to take City Slickers, or maybe it's just me, but City Slickers or Home Alone, and you try to look at that character and have him narrating as adult Kevin, it doesn't fit for me. Maybe it's because I'm thinking of Kevin Arnold as an adult being adult Fred Savage. I don't know.
Unlike Richard Dreyfuss narrating Stand By Me, and you just know it's Richard Dreyfuss. Like, it kind of fits. It kind of fits the whole narrative. Yeah.
Somebody just mentioned Square Pegs. A couple people. I love that. Only one season only, but I've thought about using it more than once as a topic here, and it probably will make its way. But really, just a one-hit wonder, so to speak.
Was somebody from Sex and the City in that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah Jessica Parker.
That's right.
Playing the part of a nerd.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, I listen, I think the Wonder Years, it's cool because, you know, we do talk about this too, how we're in 2025 and we're still seeing all of this 80s resurgence, and it doesn't seem to be going away, which is great. But with the Wonder Years, that was one of the, we talk about, what did it go back to the 60s, right?
It's like late 60s, 68, 69, 70. It really was the era that we grew up in as really young Gen Xers.
So late 60s. So we saw a little bit of that, you know, with these movies and shows kind of going back 20 or 30 years, but not a lot. And so little that they do stand out, like the Wonder Years does stand out, because there weren't a lot of shows that were looking backward like that was, if they looked back, they were looking back 50, 60, 70 years that none of us could really relate to.
Right.
Or movies like, I don't know, Dirty Dancing. Just saying.
Never going to watch it.
Just saying.
Going to watch it. Baby staying in the corner.
I didn't feel like I was watching something from the, 50s for Dirty Dancing when I was watching it. I didn't feel like Stand By Me was before my era. They seemed to find a way to pull it into the present, even though the backdrop was the past. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, the Wonder Years did a good job of that because, you know, although you could tell by obviously the conversations and the fashion, but they also did a nice job. It wasn't like I don't know, to me, it didn't feel like a period piece.
No, and when they hit the 70s, they hit the 70s hard. When they got into the 70s, I remember being a kid growing up in the shadows. Like somebody said it was the 60s and I didn't relate. I totally related to the 70s. I related to my friends having older family members that had gone to Vietnam. You know, fathers, uncles. I mean, it was still, we didn't talk about Vietnam in school. And Winnie's older brother, on the very first pilot episode, she lost him at Vietnam. That was the first episode. So, I mean, it came in, we talked dramedy. Yeah, it was funny in some scenes, but a lot of it was hitting really hard. And a lot of it, like my daughter's like, did that really happen? Like boys kissing girls without asking them for permission to kiss them. And sometimes they got the signals right, and sometimes they got the signals wrong. And the girl rebuffed them, and she's like, did he just assault her? And I'm like, no.
not in those terms from
Not-
then.
Not the intent was different, so that mattered. I don't know how to answer those questions, and it wasn't just always around sex or any of that. It was everything. Humor was different. They touched on the change in race relationships that really came through the 60s and 70s. It was an amazing show for me. And when I tell you the people that made appearances on it, it'll blow your mind, because there just were so many people that came and went before there were anybody. David Schwimmer, I mentioned. Actually, Crystal McKellar, which is Winnie's sister, actually had a recurring role. I didn't realize until yesterday that was actually her sister playing Kevin's other love interest. John Corbett, speaking of Sex and the City, was in it. Juliette Lewis had a recurring role. Robin Thicke, Chad Allen, Dooley Hill. I mean, you can just keep going. And then some people would say Marilyn Manson, because Paul, the big rumor was, the actor who played Paul, the rumor was that he grew up to become Marilyn Manson. And I think Kevin might have mentioned that.
Thankfully, that wasn't true for Paul's sake.
It was not true, but there's a resemblance there.
Yeah.
Well, somebody else said on there, and I'm curious where they got this from. They said that music rights screwed up the video releases of, it was just a couple comments back, of WKRP in Cincinnati and Wonder Years. And I'm wondering what they meant by that, because I haven't heard anything about that. Was it the popular soundtracks that were used on the Wonder Years? Like, I had not heard that about either of them.
I'll look for it as it comes along. That's a great point. I can tell you the same thing sort of happened with Dawson's Creek more recently. Their iconic opening song, they couldn't afford to keep it. They didn't expect to make money to make it worth having it open with, I don't want to wait. So now if you are, for whatever reason, was not a huge Dawson Creek fan. I'm not a hater, wasn't a huge fan. But if you were to get the DVDs or the whatever, it's not going to have that song at the beginning.
I am glad to hear that you're not a huge Dawson Creek's fan.
No.
Never saw a single episode. Wouldn't even be able to tell you what the beginning of that is.
I saw a couple episodes. My wife and the girls I dated at the time were watching it, so I know of it.
I feel like Dawson Creek and Twilight are pretty along this similar feel. Different worlds, but I think if you like Dawson's Creek, you probably like Twilight.
It was more along the lines of, I don't know, Gilmore Girls on the girls' side of it. There were those whole shows, Party of Five, those 90s shows.
Yeah.
What's that?
Party of Five was good. I liked it.
Well, and I'm telling you, it's very much the same. Same idea of familiar relationships and friends and growing up, and it wasn't as bad as you might think.
Okay. Maybe I'll give it a
Party
shot.
of Five either.
Yeah.
Apparently I wasn't into TV too much, like actual TV too much, for a range of years in there, because I missed a lot of it.
Life hated Dawson Creek, and it sucked. But again,
It's
home video release had to pay for needle drops or use fake sound-alikes.
oh wow.
So basically, it's why Northern Exposure isn't available for streaming. I think what the general consensus is that people got greedy, and I mean, we know it in social media. I used a snippet of. I'm no longer a Will Smith fan. I used this much just as an intro to show different shows of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and it took the whole video down. Everybody else was okay with it. Will Smith's production company's like, no, you can't use that. So it took it out of the video. Never going to talk about that show again. It's not allowed to be a topic here. He loses.
I couldn't even hum it, and he'd come after you.
Exactly. The main writer, Paul Fig, went to high school like 3 towns over from me and played high school. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
So the other thing about it is that it was a show that was remade, and people have mentioned they hate remakes. So they did what people branded as a remake, and everybody hated it because they're like, how dare you remake The Wonder Years? And to make matters more controversial, it's a black family instead of the original white family. What I think people miss is it wasn't a remake. It wasn't the Arnolds reimagined as different people. It was the story of a different family in the same years. And it was a really cool part at one point where they talk about the son of that new family actually served in Vietnam with Winnie's brother. And so it connected the families together. The show never was able to recover from people thinking they were trying to remake a show that they loved, which I think is a trap for a lot of things. They didn't do a good job of that, but I still thought it was a pretty decent show in its own right.
Was it called The Wonder Years as well?
It was,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And that's a mistake, I think.
Mm-hmm. Should have named it something parallel somehow.
Yeah, or just been better about saying, "Hey, we're not remaking the show you love. We're adding to the story."
Yeah.
And I mean, we've talked about it. I liked Maverick. I like when they add to the story and do it in a way that still pays homage to the original. I just don't like when they try to write over, because here's the deal: they change the script, they change the plot, they change the characters. You might as well change the name.
Yeah,
changing all those things. Why even keep the name the same?
Or add something to it. So, like Top Gun Maverick, they could have added one word to the Wonder Years that identified it as something new and different. I don't know.
CSI did it with every different city.
Yeah.
Law and Order did it with every different special unit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you knew it was a different show, but it was still in that same.
Because they're spin-offs, to Bella's point. That's how they should have sold it.
Yeah.
Is that it's a late model spin-off.
Yeah.
Because those tended to do well. Sometimes. Well, we're at 40-minute mark. So we can move on and call last call, because we do have a third topic to get to, unless you guys have anything else you want to mention about the Wonder Years. I will say once again, Winnie, not my favorite. Crushed on her, but yeah, no, she did Kevin dirty. She always had a new boyfriend every time we turned her on, although Kevin did a lot of that too. Anyway, so we've talked about the show Taxi. We've talked about the Wonder Years, covering the 70s and the 90s, and to bring us back into the 80s was a little movie and a big trend known only as casual sex. I will leave the floor open to the two of you to discuss either of those things.
Refresh my memory on who was in the movie, because I probably saw it if it was.
Casual Sex was a penultimate, like the example of late 80s, early 90s movie. It had like Victoria Jackson. It had Leah Thompson. Andrew Dice Clay was in it. It was just this like ensemble. Mary Gross had a small part. It was just this movie, and the premise was what casual sex looked like in the shadow of AIDS, and it was a comedy. So that's the 80s for you, that they were willing to make a comedy that laughed basically about what casual sex looked like in the era that we grew up in our late teens, early 20s. It talked about, are you tested? I'm tested. Are you tested? You weren't worried about a doctor's office to get some penicillin. You were worried about having sex and dying. So it was, what does dating look like in that? I like that, Kevin.
Never saw that one either. I'm just gonna have to say I am 0 for 3 on this particular episode here. I never saw the movie, because that doesn't even ring a bell. I like the other idea of the topic. We could talk about that all day.
Well, and that was the whole point, because that was the idea of the movie. And people say, how is Gen X different? Well, we were different because we were latchkey kids. Well, we were different because we raised ourselves. Well, we were different because of this, because of that. We were also different because we followed directly after the Summer of Love that lasted 15 years for our parents' generation. They called it the Summer of Love. They humped anything that moved anywhere they could. And then we come along and we're passing papers back and forth showing that we were tested. It was a change. And now there's medication available and all kinds of things. So I'm wondering if it's going the other way again at some point. I don't know. You have nothing you can't talk about casual sex, Shell?
I don't know. I could, but I'm not going to be the first one to bring it up. I mean, I could talk about the movie because I haven't seen the movie.
Chris, you're single. Let's hear it. How have things changed?
Drastically. We're not getting into my personal life. Quirk said he talked about the scene that you and I talked about earlier, John, which was not in Casual Sex, was actually in oh my God,
John Ritter.
Yeah, John Ritter and not Real Sex. That was an HBO show.
Yeah.
God, what was the movie? Skin Deep.
Skin Deep
with where he's like, did you ever see that one, Shell?
No.
Quark mentioned this scene that's hilarious. It's one of the funniest scenes, I think, in movie history, even though the movie was just okay. But he's basically, John Ritter's like this, he hooks up with everybody, and he's hooking up with this married lady, and she turns the lights out and she has a glow in the dark condom for him. So all you see is this blue like thing, right? And then you hear the door open you hear the front door, and she's like, "My husband's home," and you see it like turn. All you can see is this blue thing moving, and so he goes into the closet and shuts the door and disappears, and then the husband comes in, and he's like, "Oh, are you ready for me?" And then you see a red one, and then he comes out with the blue one, and then there's like, "Oh, look!"
There's like lightsabers.
It's hilarious.
Just even you just describing it, I'm picturing it in my mind, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to go like Google that and see if I can find that particular scene because it sounds hilarious.
I mean, especially when when you realize they see each other and they're like, "Huh?" And then they're both like, "Looking."
Well, and the other thing about the movie that I thought we could talk about as well was Andrew Dice Clay, the Dice Man, was in this. Now, if there ever was a comedian that brought out visceral reactions in people, every time I mention him, I don't get, well, I didn't like him that much. People are like, dude, the Dice Man. Or they're like, I hated him. Yeah. He wasn't funny. I didn't find anything about him funny at all. You know, it's one or the other a lot. There are some people, I guess, that are kind of lukewarm on him. But for the most part, he drew pretty visceral reactions.
Yes. He was a very quotable. I remember quoting him. Him and Sam Kinison were very quotable comedic stand-up pieces. We were constantly doing Dice Clay's rhymes, his nursery rhymes throughout. Yeah, exactly.
Hickory Dock.
Mm-hmm.
Jack and Jill went up a hill to fetch a pail of water. What was it? Jack went up. They both went up with $1.25. Jill came down with $2.50.
And we made up our own endings too. If whatever they were, whatever he said they were, we made up our own endings too. They were very funny. Yeah.
He actually did a comedy album called The Night. I think it was The Night the Comedy Died, and he bombed on purpose.
Oh. And
it was a whole like performative arts thing, and people just didn't get it. But it actually like he was. I mean, he obviously. Oh, did somebody say something?
Dice Man ruined Mother Goose for me. I just saw that one.
So Kristen's comment. It's like right there.
I'm not there yet.
Oh, God.
Oh my God.
I wish you guys. There it is. Jack going up the hill with bucket of cordial came down $2.50.
I don't see the one you just highlighted below Doreen. Yeah. Spin the bottle games, and then there's Kristen's comment.
Oh, that's the one. Hickory Dickory Dock. 2025, my girlfriend. Okay. And you made me put it on the screen. That's what I need to read before I share.
I'm crying now.
Oh, boy.
The lightsabers.
Kristen. Come on.
Kristen, look at my face. Look at my face. My eyes are, oh my God, I'm crying. I cry when I laugh sometimes. If I laugh really instantly, so don't mind me.
I mean, getting back to the casual sex movie, Leah Thompson.
Yes.
All the Right Moves.
Yes.
With Tom Cruise.
Back to the Future, All the Right Moves. TV show, Caroline, wasn't that her?
In the City, I think it was, like, right?
Yeah, Caroline in the City, wasn't that her?
Yeah, I think, that was her.
Rated sitcom. It went like 3-4 seasons, maybe. I mean, it kept getting. I think this was right around then, or just before. So this was definitely at the height of her popularity.
Was it before or after Back to the Future? It was after, right?
This was just 2 or 3 years after.
Yeah.
Caroline in the City was 95. It went 4 seasons.
Okay.
And again, it's like Wings. They like had a pattern, and they all look exactly alike. The cast looks exactly alike. 2 girls, 2 guys. I mean, but yeah, I mean, it wasn't a small cast by any stretch of the imagination, and it was a movie that did pretty well. Unless you're Shell, who didn't watch anything on TV or at the movies from 1985 to 1992.
Yeah,
I'll keep that in mind for the future.
I did, though. It was just, I always have something to say about most of these, but for whatever reason, it's like you picked my brain for like the 3 things I've just, nothing. I got nothing.
Well, the other reason was I really did want to talk about casual sex. So I got to tell you, I was joking with my kids, and we're going to go to Greece this summer. And I spent a lot of summers as a kid in Greece, not touring this beautiful European countryside, going to get like baths on a steel tin tub on my grandmother's porch. I saw a different side of Greece. But I joke with him like, who are you going to meet? I'm like, well, you're going to meet my cousins. You're going to meet your cousins. I go, and maybe if you're lucky, you will meet the woman the fictitious woman that I fictitiously lost my virginity to. Because most guys in the late 80s had a girl in Canada or a girl 4 towns over, or for me, it was a girl in Greece. Because you just made up, because there's no way in hell I was going to admit to still being a virgin at like 16. Because that was like, oh my God, so old. But it's like we went from that to by the time I was 20, have you been tested was a question. It was a thing. Sex was not casual. And I'm like, you guys don't have to admit to having or not having had sex prior to marriage. You can still be a virgin for all I know and care, and I'm good with that. But just in the cultural sense, there was a huge shift.
Yeah, and if you were Farmer Ted, you had a girlfriend in Niagara Falls. You wouldn't know.
Yeah.
It. Actually, it was Brian. It was Brian in The Breakfast Club, but same actor. Yeah, she lives in Niagara Falls. You wouldn't know.
But that's what it was. I remember making up a girl. And your friends knew, but you know what? They weren't going to call you up on your fake girlfriend if you didn't call them out on theirs.
Yeah.
And that was a storyline in Wonder Years as well. Kevin's sitting in the locker room and they're lying about the girls they'd been with. And again, my 13-year-old's like, well, guys do that? And I'm like, sweetheart, guys start talking about girls in locker rooms when we're 13, 14, 15. At some point that stops. Women continue talking to each other about everything until the day they die. The things you women share scares me. Still a thing to check people's testing, says Kristen. I'm sure, but sex was scary. There was nothing casual about it. It was scary. If I had friends that are like, oh, I screwed up, I wasn't careful, and then it was like, hold your breath until you find out you're not going to die. I mean,
no, you're right. I mean, we had unfortunate examples.
George Glass is his girl.
What is that?
Brady Bunch reference. I had a George Glass. You don't remember George Glass? Jan made up a boyfriend?
No, I don't remember that.
No, I don't.
Oh, yeah, it was a thing. It was funny, life. It is a funny comment, but it went whoosh.
When I think of fake names, I just think of Regina Phalange and Ken Adams.
Ken Adams. Women
guys brag. That is very true.
Well, I would say that
a lot of the bragging, whereas women never grow out of the oversharing.
Guys, I understand, are not as detailed in their conversations.
Correct. You women discuss.
I haven't sat in on the conversation.
I was overhearing 2 women have this discussion probably 3 weeks ago at the bar. They didn't know I could hear them. And they were talking about this one woman's new boyfriend. And when I tell you, everything was discussed. Things he did well, things he didn't do well, biology, girth. It was all discussed right out there at the bar. And I'm just like, holy moly.
That's not.
My wife is not allowed to go out to the bars. She's not allowed to talk to girlfriends.
I did a whole video series on like a lot of vagina there, and Eileen Dover and Mike Hunt, yeah, I did a whole video series on that. It was a really popular video series.
So there was somebody mentioned actually in the, let's see, who was it? Oh yeah, Steven. There were songs even written about it. Bare Naked Ladies, Life in a Dangerous Time. And also, I believe the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, The Impression That I Get, was also about that, when he's like, I never really had to knock on wood, but I know some friends that have.
Oh,
and
I never got that reference till now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but
no, it makes sense. Talk about sex.
Maybe it's talking about drugs, but I think they were talking about that. Like,
no, it sounds right. It could be unintended pregnancy as well, but I mean, it sounds like it's something. Girth. Why don't they talk about girth?
He said, "I'm not a coward. I've just never been." He said, "I'm not a coward. I've just never been tested." I don't know. Like, it just feels like there's some lyrics in there that probably pointed to it, maybe.
Speaking of George, anybody remember George Clooney on Facts of Life? Of course.
Oh, yeah. Definitely remember George on Facts.
Did a video talking about how if you're Gen X, you remember George on both sides of ER. ER with the slash, the comedy, and ER, the show. Both same name, same actor.
Blister Bill. Why they talk about Cortez?
Yeah.
Chandler. Yeah, we cannot go an episode without having Friends references.
Oh, it's Mike Hunt and Dick Hertz from Holden, Mass. Girls have to talk to other girls because we learned that guys don't listen. Come on, that's not fair. All right, so coming up on 55 minutes, and I got a topic that I do want to talk about for a little bit as we get to the reveal. So we did what we always do. Talked about 3 topics. The one that I thought would initiate a lot of conversation, apparently people were shy and we didn't want to overshare, so we left that one kind of alone. But we started with Taxi, we moved on to the Wonder Years, and then we ended on casual sex. I will give you guys a moment. Any idea on what those 3 topics? I'll start with our virtually live studio audience. What do they have in common?
I don't know. Let's see what somebody says.
I had a thought, but it's so random that it's.
Oh! You had a random thought?
I had a random thought. I know it's like really hard for you to like swallow.
Contemplate the possibility. And I will tell you that I'm shelling this topic. I made sure I sourced it, and I'm going to tell it in a way that there's just no doubting that it connects. So people are loving Taxi, talking about Leah Thompson. All right, Life. I see Court, Leah Thompson. Leah Thompson was never in the Wonder Years and never in on Taxi. So no, she's not the connection. Raunchy comedians. Andrew Dice Clay was definitely a raunchy comedian. Definitely played his part. Kaufman, Andy Kaufman, you could say he probably dipped into the raunchiness in Taxi, so I could see that. Wonder Years kind of slips out of that. JTR says Back to the Future. So the connection for the 3 are that each one of these shows housed an actor from Back to the Future.
Nice. Yeah.
The Wonder Years, the older brother that everybody hated in the show, played Leah Thompson's younger brother, played Michael J. Fox's uncle in Back to the Future. Leah Thompson actually was in Back to the Future as Michael J. Fox's mom. And then finally in on Taxi, we have Doc Brown.
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good one. You just no doubt, Back to the Future.
Yeah.
So all of them have Back to the Future actors, and great. I mean, from Christopher Lloyd, man, just incredible on Taxi, incredible on Back to the Future. A guy that just creates characters. And what I loved about Jason Hervey is whenever anybody ever watches The Wonder Years, if they watched any amount of it, even my daughter, you hate him. If you have siblings, they played that perfectly. He was such a jerk to Kevin. And they played the little brother on Back to the Future. And then finally, Leah Thompson, we talked casual sex. She was trying to have casual sex with her son in Back to the Future.
Yeah. Thankfully, she didn't know. And it didn't happen.
She didn't know.
Wait, and Calvin Klein connects to Back to the Future too. I'm telling you, right? Okay.
Well, if you look at Kevin's comment, he tried to get Calvin Klein to be the connection for today's show. Just couldn't. And I said, listen, there is no way that my connection is not going to have an arrow flying through each station. There can be no question that these things connect at the end of the show because Shell will bury me.
So I love Back to the Future. And again, like the soundtracks that we talk about in the 80s, much more of a poppy soundtrack, but hey, that was the movie. although when I think about like my top 5 movies in the 80s, I usually don't have Back to the Future if it's just my top 5 favorite. But if I were to say what are the 5 most iconic movies from the 80s, Back to the Future is in the top 5.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was something so different, and it's almost like a perfect movie from beginning to end. I mean, it really does. Like every minute just feels like it feels like it was a perfect movie, and it lasted just the right amount of time. It just had a great story, great characters. It was fun from beginning to end. And that's why I say it's one of the top 5 movies of the 80s. When you look back and you say 5 movies go in a time capsule, these are the movies that represent the 80s. Back to the Future has to be in there.
Definitely. Stephen K., we're going to get to that. So up to this point, yes, this has happened every Friday at 5:30. We are going to be changing the date to try to get it a broader audience. So starting next week, we won't be on Friday. We'll be on Monday, the following Monday at 8 p.m.
Is that the time we're doing?
8 or 9. We're going to do 9 because West Coast.
9? I do Sunday at 8, and it seems to work really well because that way but 9 might work better for those on the West Coast. I think that's what you said. So moving forward, it'll be live on Monday, 8 p.m. on the 3View Mirror, and I'll have links everywhere to get everybody there.
Yeah.
You'll be able to catch it. So check for it Monday night. Go to the Facebook for the 3View Mirror podcast. Sign up for the Facebook page to get those comments to know when it's going to show and how. But we'll get you there, I promise.
Yeah.
I want to tell you what my guess was going to be, having never seen. I did not get the Back to the Future, but having never seen any of these, truly, my thought was of Jim Carrey, because you mentioned all the people that had guest starred on the Wonder Years, and I thought, well, maybe he guest starred at some point on the Wonder Years, and I wouldn't have known that. And I'm thinking of him and the Andy Kaufman and the Man in the Moon, and then I thought, well, maybe Casual Sex, he had something to do with that movie. Again, having never saw it, but that was going to be my guess, was a Jim Carrey reference. But again, having not seen them, how would I know?
Well, and again, it's the actors are the only one that I thought might be a swerve to make it not super easy with Jason Hervey, because you may not have known him well enough in the Wonder Years if you hadn't seen it. And his part was fairly small, although significant. It was fairly small in Back to the Future.
JTR said his top 5 iconic 80s movies are Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, Goonies, Indiana Jones, and Predator. It's a pretty good list.
Nice list.
It would be tough to list 5 because I would end up with 10.
What I was going to say to your point, Chris, although it probably is on one of my top 5 favorites, it's so tough to pull 5 out when you've got movies like we do. But in terms of pop culture viability and what it did, it's there. Yeah. Not only because what it added to pop culture, but pop culture in the movie. The product placement was done incredibly well in Back to the Future. The Nikes, the Pepsi Free. They put things in, the Cubs winning the World Series, albeit 1 year earlier than they actually did in real life. And this was my clue, by the way, that I decided to wear today, because in Back to the Future, the Cubs win the World Series finally.
John, you just wrote in the comments about 9 o'clock on Monday. I thought we just said 8. I wrote it down.
I thought Chris said we decided 9. Because it would be easier. It'd be easier for the West Coast people to jump on.
Okay, 9 then. 9.
9 Eastern, yeah.
9 Eastern.
Yeah. Somebody else 6 o'clock on the West Coast. I think that and hopefully everybody can stay up from 9 to 10. I think you can do it.
Now, somebody else asked, is that this coming Monday, or will that be
a week from Monday?
A week from Monday. Okay. So we'll have a couple extra days.
So So we'll do.
Who's on topic that day?
Huh?
Who's next?
Chris.
Yeah. Chris. So we're not going to do next Friday.
Correct. We're just going to wait until Monday.
Okay.
So the DeLorean itself, incredible. And for those that don't know, they were going to choose a refrigerator in the original script. Those of us that watched Sherry in the refrigerator and for Punky Brewster would have been traumatized, because the original time machine for Back to the Future was a refrigerator, not a DeLorean. The hoverboard. I mean, which one of us didn't really think before our deaths we'd get one of these? Like, eventually, sooner or later. And still we wait. But pretty cool, huh? One of my favorite toys.
Yeah.
Favorite of the three?
I mean, for me, it's one. Like we've talked about these trilogies and how odd it is, especially with Spielberg, that he makes the second one so dark.
Right.
I mean, Back to the Future 2 was dark, and so was
my favorite though.
Texas A&M Jones was really dark as well. So
yeah, Back to the Future 2 was my favorite because they went to the future. I like that, even though now that's 10 years in the past.
It was 2015, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Somebody told me today, and I just posted it, that Raiders of the Lost Ark came out in 1981.
Yeah.
Was set in 1931. And next year, if they had made Raiders of the Lost Ark, it would come out in 2026, and it would take place in 1981. 1981, next year will be the new 1931.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, no, it took me a minute.
No, that's not.
No, it is.
That's not.
I might not have said it right, but it is right.
It's not. That's 45 years, and 50 years is between 31 and 81 is 50 years. Between 81.
Yeah, but between 81 and 31 is 50 years, and between 2026 and 1981,
45 years.
Then I got the date wrong. But whatever the true dates are, within a couple years, the math works. My memory doesn't.
I was like, saying, don't make us that old yet. Come on, like
you are that old though. It's literally a couple years off.
But if it was 50 years, if it was 50 years, I'd be 61, dude. I'm not.
50 years to 45 years, either way, dude. It's there. Split the difference. It's 3 years. We're old.
Raiders is 1937, Kevin.
I just saw a video.
Wasn't the 1937 is the new 81. It doesn't make me feel any better.
Wasn't it October 26, 1984, right? That one of the dates they went.
85. I thought he traveled to. I don't know. I know he traveled into the future to 2015.
But was it October 26th? Because I just saw a video. It was on TikTok, actually. I saw it this morning. I was actually going to forward it to you. It's funny that we're talking about this, about how Back to the Future and Goonies, they went back and analyzed the movie Goonies, and they saw that it was October on a calendar and all this other stuff that they analyzed. And he mentioned something about Saturday, and they weren't in school. So then they went, and the Fratellis got released on this date, and then they figured out that the Goonies was actually occurred on October 26th.
Yeah, so based on a calendar showing in the Goonies and a timeline in Back to the Future, Michael J. Fox's actual day that he starts from was the same day as the Goonies adventure.
The Goonies, yes. I just saw that. It was the first time I ever saw that. It was like mind-blowing kind of thing, you know?
This is way too much math for me. I mean, my head is hurting. As soon as we got into algebra in like 7th grade or 8th grade, whatever it was, and the first time they put letters with numbers, and they're like 1A plus 5 equals 12. I'm like, why is the alphabet with the numbers? I just give me the magnets back, the apples and the oranges. Like, this is what I need. I don't need all of this confusion.
Oh my God. My first major in college was math. I loved math. I loved it.
That's why I could have never made Back to the Future, because there was too much math in there. Too many calculations.
I've seen more George Clooney comments.
What is going on with George Clooney?
I mean, I mentioned him in a video yesterday, maybe, and maybe that's where it's coming from. I don't know, but there's a lot of George Clooney going on. This was, I'm like, I feel like it's one of those topics that I'm lost on. Was he one of the topics?
Now, I will say that I like a lot of different types of music, and a lot of it isn't like super poppy, but anytime The Power of Love comes on, I do get transported back. Like, I feel like I'm right back in the movie theater. Every single time that song comes on, I get all the sounds and the senses and the smells. It all comes back to seeing Back to the Future in the theater. It's just one of those songs that does that to me.
Wait, Robert says he can't see me taking calculus. I play a role that seems a lot more hickish and dumber than what I really am. I'm just gonna say that.
If one of us here is a certified math whiz that's actually gone and worked with NASA, it's Shell, not the two of us. The closest thing to an actual rocket scientist in this group is her.
It's me, actually. Yeah,
I'm just-
I know. It just doesn't. I don't fit the bill, and I don't sometimes talk like the bill. But yeah, that was my first.
So I will plug May 30th, 31st, May 30th, 31st, and June 1st. I will be in Dallas, Texas at the Fan Expo, where the cast of Back to the Future are going to be running a panel. So Michael J. Fox will be there, Leah Thompson's going to be there, Christopher Lloyd's going to be there, and I will be there. So if that's something you guys have any interest in coming and seeing and doing, I'm not affiliated in any way with the convention, but they did give me a press pass, so I will be attending and I will be covering it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited.
It's awesome.
I will share a couple locations for me too, if that's cool. I told you guys I'll be in Jacksonville and Sarasota next week. And then I'll be in June, I'll be in Puerto Rico. So if anybody is in Puerto Rico, San Juan, let me know. In October, I'll be in Destin, Florida. In November, I'll be in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and a few others as well. But a lot of those are going to be like 1-day trips. I'm in and out. So
Nice.
the ones I mentioned are 3-day trips.
Dixie, can't wait to meet you. Shell, anything on the horizon for you?
I'll just say where I'm going to be over the next probably 6 weeks, and that would be right outside of Pittsburgh, probably here somewhere. That's pretty much where I'm going to be.
That'll work. And then this weekend, if you're anywhere near Charlotte, not tomorrow and Sunday, but next week, we have the Love and Life Music Festival. I've also been given press passes for that. It is the first weekend in May here in Charlotte. Who's going to be there? Gwen Stefani, Dave Matthews Band, DJ Jazzy Jeff, not Will Smith because he's on my bad side, but DJ Jazzy Jeff will be there. Third Eye Blind, a bunch of people. Check it out, and that's where I'll be.
Nice.
That's what I got, guys. Oh, somebody asked if we could tell our ages, and I don't know if they were asking our ages or if they were asking chat. I see chat is actually answering. I was born in 1970.
I was born in 70 as well.
I wrote mine in there. I was born in 73.
Oh, yeah. 1970. Yep. August 31st, 1970. Man. It's weird. It's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
It's weird. We are, wait a minute. So I'm 54. So I'm still hanging on to the 45 to 54 demographic. And the Nielsen rating. Pretty soon, I'm going to be to the 55 to 70 demographic and Nielsen ratings.
It doesn't go to 70.
Yes, it does.
Fuck off.
The freshman class, we're the freshman class about to graduate from the freshman class of the old people. That's what the people were saying.
Come on.
I'm hanging on the 45 to 54 demographic. I'm holding on for dear life.
I just remember Christopher Lloyd being so old in Taxi, and I found out he was only 46. He was like 9 years younger than I am now.
Mm-hmm.
Silver Moon asks, Chris, I absolutely love your shirt. Where do you get one?
Oh, thanks. I didn't see that, Silver Moon. Yeah, so it's at the genxjono.dashery.com.
You can go to my link tree right here in my bio. Connect over. It is in the Chris Clues section of my store.
I have a little catalog. It's building of designs, and John was nice enough to allow me to take some of my designs that I created and put them into his store, his little store. So
that's
yeah,
from way in the back. You got to dig through, but they're back there somewhere.
Yeah, they're like in the in the Spencer's Gifts, the posters in the back where you're flipping through. That's where you'll find my designs, and there's more to come. So I appreciate it.
All right, guys, that's all I got. Join us again in 10 days or so when we debut the primetime version of this show Monday night. It'll probably broadcast here and over there. I'll find a way to make it work so we're not hard to find, especially during a time change. We might as well keep it here for now. So just join us back here Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time for what promises to be a music-filled episode of Chris Clues hosted Three View Mirror podcast.
Yeah, and there'll be no dirty dancing. So just to confirm, it's not this Monday, it's the following Monday, just for everybody out there. So we will not be on next Friday.
Correct.
Our next episode will be Monday the
5th.
Is that the 5th? Let's make sure. Cinco de Mayo?
Sounds good.
If it's Cinco de Mayo, I'm going to have to build something in for that. Okay.
Pretty sure it is because I think, I'm gone. I'm in Charlotte at the music festival, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
Might have to have Three Amigos as one of the conversation pieces. We'll see.
Sounds good. All right, guys. Peace. Be good. Have an amazing week. We'll see you again soon.
Stay rad, everybody.